welcome back to Chetto. With us today is Ashley Waite, who's an autistic self-advocate, but also a candidate for the Greens for coming Victoria State election, and David Brandt, who is the chairman of Disability Justice Advocacy, and also a board member of Victorian Council of Social Service, amongst all sorts of other things. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So one of the things I thought I'd be talking about today was that there seems to be a belief that people with disabilities are slackers and leaners. They're not really seen as being full members of society, at least by Joe Hockey's standards. Do you think this will be do you think this changes if a party with GSP will make a major difference to what's happening?
I think that a lot of the vast majority of people with disabilities want to work, but being forced into situations where, for example, they're suggesting forcing people to do work for the dole and things like that. And if people have a reduced capacity to work and then they're forced to go and spend 15 hours of their week doing these things, they then have no capacity left to actually go and look for work that they would rather be doing. So some of those changes will actually have an impact on the participation rate of people with disabilities as a whole, but particularly those with a lower capacity to work.
Now, as a result of the latest federal budget, there's been a major change in the idea about whether disability support pension really should be done for most of the people who are currently on it. Now, do you think, what does the Greens think of those sort of things, Ashley?
I know that the party as a whole are completely opposed to the changes to it. I think most people would actually like to see a lot of those requirements for the DSP relaxed in some ways, because at the moment they do have a very strong bias against people whose disabilities are either episodic or difficult to communicate. And you know, that tends to affect a lot of autistic people who aren't very good at communicating what their challenges at working are, but those challenges still exist, and so often they're refused access to DSP as it is. So changes that make it even more difficult for people to access those will push that small minority off that had successfully achieved it, and also a lot of other people who have particularly mental illnesses and things like that they don't seem to want to honour. So there's a big fear from a lot of people that have anxiety conditions and depression conditions that they'll just simply be refused because they won't be able to prove up to Centrelink's standard that they don't have a good capacity to work.
Right. So has Disability Justice Advocacy or any other groups you're involved with thought about those issues, David?
We have. The views today will be mine. It's a complex issue. We've been here before. We've been here before under the Howard government. We've not had much opposition to some of these ideas from ALP governments either. It depends exactly who is going to be cut from the system, and I don't think we know that yet. Historically, governments have moved people who were considered unemployable onto disability support pensions to keep down the percentage of people who are unemployed. I feel an element of that here now. And this government is being particularly ideological in the way it approaches it, something out of Tory policy in the UK.
But it seems to be predicated more on either ideological hatred of people who are not supposedly pulling their weight, and also an attempt to just cut the welfare bill.
The lifters leaner thing is appalling, and I've not met anybody who really believes in it. People with disability require three things. They need education, they need access, and they need employment. People that are disabled don't want to be existing on the low level of the disability support pension. They want to be contributing, they want to be working, they want to be earning.
Looking at it purely economic viewpoint, there'll be a lot of people with disabilities who their support needs would mean that they would earn, the net amount they'd earn would be comparatively little. Do you think it's realistic to have everybody who's on disability working at some level?
I think that a lot of, for a significant portion, finding the capacity to work or the will to work is there, but that the jobs just don't exist. So getting the right accommodations to be able to sustain work in a workplace is a very, very significant problem, and those jobs don't exist. So even if somebody is willing to work and they want to work and they have some capacity to work part-time, there just might not be any jobs for them. And so if you take the attitude that such people aren't pulling their weight because they're unemployed, and ignore the fact that they're unemployed because we've done a really crappy job of making workplaces able to support them, then you've missed the whole problem. And Australia does really poorly compared to other nations in terms of the participation rate of people with disabilities across the board. So it's not a problem with the people that have disabilities. It's a problem with our work culture and the laws that back that up, and there's just no support to actually get into employment.
Governments fail in that sense too. 20 years ago, about 6% of federal government employees were people with disabilities. That figure has dropped, I think, nearly 1.5% now, so it's well below 5%. So they're not exactly they're talking the talk, but they're not providing the jobs.
Well, thanks very much, Ashley Waite, who's an autistic self-advocate and a Victorian candidate for the Greens. All best of luck with the forthcoming election.
Thanks, great to be here.
And David Brandt, who's an advocate of long-standing, current chairperson of Disability Justice Advocacy, also a member of Red Cross Board. Thanks very much.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks very much for watching ShareChat. We'll be back next week.